Hi there. Last month I uploaded a video that went through all of Martin Iveson's musical journey with an emphasis on his game soundtracks. After that, I sat down with Martin himself to get his story in his own words. We covered a lot of ground, as you might have noticed just from the length of this video. As such, I've organized each topic with timestamps available in the description below and on-screen indicators showing how long we stay on each topic. Hopefully that provides enough information for you to decide when and where is a good stopping point, or even starting point if you prefer. I should mention that we experienced a lot of technical difficulties. I lost several pieces of audio and video, and accidentally captured my cursor flying all over Martin's video feed quite a few times. I apologize for the mess, but hopefully it's not too distracting from the content within. Having said all that, let's dive in. So, just to start out with, like a basic introduction, like who are you, where are you from, and what do you do these days?
My name's Martin Iveson. Some people may know me as the music artist Atjazz. I live in the Midlands in England, and I currently run record labels. I distribute record labels. I'm a renowned remixer, producer, and dog's body to the music industry. I used to, for quite some time, be a games music creator, so composing music for video games, audio design, creating sound effects, also doing full motion video and a kind of light mastering at the time. I've been in this town now for 30 years, and I came here to work for Core Design back in the day in 1991. It's 31 years actually this year in September. So yeah, that's kind of the outline of who I am.
31 years, huh?
31 years in this town, yeah. I guess I'm from here now.
Yeah. So, my question is, what was your musical upbringing?
Really have one. Liked it. I always liked music. I was kind of, always acted to kind of popular pop songs like, Michael Jackson songs, or you'd know ABBA songs or whatever. You'd hear them on the radio. We did have what we used to call a radiogram, which is like a big wooden unit, a sideboard, and the middle flipped up, and it had a record player in the middle. A few vinyl in the side. Beast soundtrack. Everyone had that. I think they way overpressed that. And then you'd put your record on, and it would play the record, and then drop the next one down and play the next one. So I had that. That also had a radio on it, and I used to find interesting radio stations. Apart from brother being a decent singer, professional singer, but just a decent singer, really isn't any kind of musical kind of family background for me. It was just, I just picked it up as I went on, got into breakdancing, skateboarding, listened to hip hop as I was a little bit older, into my teens and stuff. So it kind of tumbled, I tumbled into the playing video games, getting a computer, getting a better computer, into music or on the Commodore 64.
Yeah, I think you said the Delta loader, like they had an interactive loader. And that was like your start into electronic music or game music, or what was that?
Yeah, kind of. It was like listening to Delta or music on Parallax or the music on International Karate, and yeah, I guess going kind of, I like that. I really feel that sound. I really want to be involved in that somehow. There were no kind of real hefty thoughts of like, I'm going to do that when I'm older kind of thing. I just really enjoyed it. And as time went on, I eventually was able to get a Commodore Amiga, and there was free software called GMC, Games Music Creator, and it was like a 4-channel, 8-bit sampling, an MPC really. You build patterns and you put your patterns into a song structure, and that was it. So that's where it started for me, and I started playing around with my friend Andy in Games Music Creator and my friend Rob, and then we'd go to, you know, video game shops and stuff, and then back in the day there were boxes of discs on the top that you could just take, and they were essentially discs that people had either sent to the shop or they'd left behind, and it had people's addresses on, and started sending our wares around, you know, sending music to this guy and that music, person send me a demo and could do some music for this, and you know, you kind of just built up some geek moss as it rolled.
Yeah, I think that's how you got into like Anarchy. You got some like
Yeah,
friends through
exactly.
there.
Yeah, through my friend Dan. I can't remember how I met Dan, actually. It may have been in an Anarchy video. He was a graphics designer at the time, Dan Scott. Or I just kind of got hold of his details off a disc and just called him from a telephone box back in the day. Would have been about 13 or 14 years old or something. So you kind of get into little groups of friends, kind of pen friends kind of thing. You only either speak on the telephone, which was really cool because it was quite direct and quick, or you send each other stuff through the post. I can't tell you the amount of jiffy bags, we use stamps and stuff like that, you know, we used to send around. You used to get your own stamps back like 10 times. Put sellotape over so they couldn't stamp them, you see, because we were only kids and we didn't have any money. You know, so I think overall then Dan started when he was getting a bit older in 15, 16, 17. He was looking to start to look for a career in the games world or doing something with computers, and he got a job at Core Design as a coder. He was a graphic designer prior to that.
Yeah, I think that's also where you met Matt Simmons, was it?
I kind of met Matt through the Dan thing, really, because we were in the demo group together. As my mind goes back, we actually caught a bus from the northeast of England in Darlington all the way to Poole, and it was my friend, me and Andy. He was another coder actually. We stayed at Dan's house for about a week. We caught a bus to Chelsea and went to stay with Matt, which was really cool because I was a massive fan of his work. Quite interesting seeing he had absolutely zero setup as well, apart from a Commodore Amiga and a sampler in the back of it.
That's all you need, right?
Well, exactly. You know, I've got all of this stuff, but essentially I just sit here sampling stuff still anyway, which is a bit crazy. Dan offered Matt an opportunity to come to Core Design in Derby, their in-house musician, and I don't think Matt wanted to leave home. It was a bit too soon for him because we were all quite young. And then he called me as kind of his second option, and I jumped on a train in Derby and got the job on the day and moved down a week later, and that was it, when I was 17.
So something that I found was particularly interesting was you described it as pen pals, basically. It's these days you just get on the internet and you can talk to anybody you want, find a community, get in it. But back then you really had to like put some effort into getting together. And you guys actually did that with like I think Anarchy organized a few like get-togethers, like a bunch of parties or something.
The demo parties they were really good, and they were always quite big. Actually, you know, because the two guys, it was Mr. Big and Judge Drock, I think, were kind of leading the group. Really nice guys. Judge Drock was a postman. He was incredibly funny. He was a really hilarious human being. And yeah, they set up parties in Yorkshire, which is like, you know, an hour and a half north of here, and places like now. I can't remember where, Doncaster and places like that. And it was really nice because you'd go up there. It was like grew up in a weird way, really, because it was like having a sleepover, but it was also like it was so weird because it was in a big hall, so it was like a dormitory, and people used to set their computers up, tables. I don't know who paid the electric bill, and we'd take some money and some food and a sleeping bag, and just go through making things. We'd finish our demos there. There'd be competitions. There'd be prizes for those that won the competitions. So it was really well organized. We went, when I was 17, we went to Denmark. We used to call them copy parties back in the day. And then down in Kent, near yeah, they were all over the place, and they were really cool because you'd get to meet, you get to see the faces that you'd see their names doing this on the screen.
Yeah.
Or you'd hear the music, or you'd see their great graphics. And our friends from the Netherlands, Facet and McCree, they used to come over and join us at the parties. So we'd have quite a strong front at these parties. So he and what went on to be Lemon, we were quite a tight bunch of people, and there were quite a few of us, and we were quite open-minded as well. Closed kind of book, if you know what I mean.
They were called copy parties. I think the one you guys organized was actually called just The Party.
Yeah, I think I remember now. Yeah, The Party. Yeah. It wasn't much of a party, as I remember. It was like a lot of greasy hair and,
Yeah.
tapping on keyboards.
It's kind of a gathering of nerds in a way.
Oh, absolutely. It was Nerdsville 300%. A bit that's before everyone was autistic. It was just, I was into something. But yeah, it was good fun. It was really nice, especially when you're young. You're building up a crew, nice crew of people, nice crew of friends and stuff.
Yeah, and then another thing about pen pals, aliases. Everybody had an alias back then.
Mm.
You went through, I guess, 3. You have Nuke, Spaceman, and then Atjazz.
Yeah, I mean, Atjazz was never ever related to any of the kind of the computer side of it. I moved away from. I think that it goes with, it goes hand in hand with artists, really. I think there's always kind of a weird persona kind of thing, and even artists, as in painters and stuff. Not everybody goes by their, real names. So I think it's just part of the parcel. Everyone's a bit weird and wants to have an alter ego, I guess, And I think especially in the demo scene, no one was no one was actually called by their real name, as far as I remember.
Yeah, that checks out. Like, the only guy that comes to mind is he goes by his initials, which are IQ. So, I mean,
Yeah.
You wouldn't know.
No. It changed in the video games world, obviously. Everybody at that point were, unless they were a group of people or a company of artists, where everyone went by their actual names. But yeah, in the demo scene, I think it's all alter ego massive, isn't it?
Yeah. Was there any story behind your aliases, Nuke and Spaceman?
No, I'll be honest. I think I got Nuke from the drug everyone took in RoboCop 2.
Oh, okay.
We all went in their necks or something, and I just thought it was nice and cool. And then when I started kind of experimenting more, and my music became a bit more like, spacey and odd and more electronic, I guess, rather than just kind of bloops and blops and what have you. I just wanted to kind of leave the Nuke stuff behind and kind of have a different start point, to be able to kind of experiment in a different way and not be held down by what I'd been doing prior to that. I mean, it was a long time ago, so I can't really remember. I was probably drunk.
Yeah, it seems like you only used the Spaceman alias for like a couple of months, maybe.
I think it was when because we never really left Anarchy. It kind of just fizzled out. But when we did Lemon with Martin, McCree, myself, and Dan, and a few other people, we, I just wanted to kind of have a fresh start as well. I think it felt right because the music had changed at that point quite a lot. I was really into like acid jazz and a bit more dancey stuff, and you know, I had a synthesizer and I was doing more of self-sampling rather than finding stuff off CDs or sample CDs or whatever it was back then, or even off the radio. I was actually sampling myself from the keyboard. So I don't know, it felt like a bit of a jump maybe.
Yeah, it makes sense. It definitely seems to be linked to Lemon.
Yeah, I think it was around there. If I can try and cast my mind back, it felt different with Lemon. We were having, you know, at that point we were all working, you know. We had jobs and we were going out, we were a bit older, you know, hanging out, going to the pub, talking about other things, going over to Amsterdam to visit the guys and hanging out at their houses and, you know, working in different, working on music and graphics and stuff in different environments, you know. And it was really nice. It was like quite a tight little group.
It seems like the same people that were in Anarchy were also at Core. Or at least there's like a bit of overlap.
Yeah, I think that's because there were some talented people that, you know, were probably more advanced than those coming out of university, because they'd already written 3 or 4 demos, which are essentially, you know, non-interactive video games. So you'd get, you know, we had a few people like Soren and Jakob they were from Denmark as well. They were in Lemon with us. I'm not sure if they kind of crossed over into Anarchy or whatever, but they worked at Core for quite some time. We did Blastar together, actually, the 3 of us. But yeah, you know, there was a few, and then Martin came over, Facet, he came from Amsterdam and worked at Core for a while. Then we had René Molnitz from Ars in Denmark, he was a really good friend of mine. We actually were roommates. We shared an apartment together. That was cool. And then we had Anders. I'm not sure that Anders did anything for the game stuff, but he definitely was still involved in everything we were doing. So yeah, there was you know, our kind of friendship group was quite far and wide, although it was, you know, primarily in Europe and Scandinavia.
Yeah.
Where it all kind of happened.
We talked a little bit about how you got into Core, but something I thought was interesting was, how did you deal with like the sudden limitations? Because I remember with Wolfchild, you were only allowed to use 2 channels to write the entire soundtrack.
Yeah, it was more by kind of choice than anything else, because we wanted to have sound effects, some background stuff, and music at the same time. And with, obviously, on a Commodore Amiga, you only have 4 mono channels of audio. So, you know, as soon as another sound starts, the last one stops on a channel. So I was using the old, you know, echoing techniques, which you'll probably hear in the music, where if you had a lead line or an arpeggiator or something, you'd kind of copy it within the notes on the other channel where you could fit it in the exact amount of clicks away from the last one in order to make an echo and turn the volume down. So those 2 channels of music were just busy with numbers. Trying to make the music as, you know, interesting as possible, and at the same time we had one channel that was kind of reserved for background kind of sound effects or the sound effects that were going on, because sometimes you have 2 sound effects at the same time. So we realized that having one channel of sound effects wasn't great, because if you had an explosion and you shot your gun, the explosion would get cut off. So we would choose the channels wisely as to where things like explosions or electrical noises or wind or motors or engine sounds or things like that would be maybe delegated down to the 3rd channel, and then footsteps and gunshots and jump sounds and what have you, and lands and deaths and all that kind of stuff was reserved for the 4th channel. So it was quite, yeah, the music, it wasn't the most fun to write music into mono channels, but, you know, I expanded on it when we did the CD version, when we used the MIDI stuff. So
Yeah,
I've got
I was
something.
just thinking, like, from your perspective, you've been writing all these demos, and, what do you call them, disc mags
Hmm.
with 4 channels, and you can just do whatever you want. And then you get into the games industry, and it's like, here's 2 channels, have fun.
Yeah, exactly that. Exactly that. I mean, we still with title music and stuff. You had 3 channels, because you need your sounds for when you're moving around with the whatever you had back then, a mouse, joystick.
Yeah.
Can't even remember. It was a joystick. There we go. Um, yes, Wonderdog. I think it was Wonderdog. No, Chuck Rock 2 actually. That was another good example of the 2 channel of music. Um, I think we might have even had 3 channels in points where certain bits of the music could be cut out if a sound effect needed to take over. Because we had things like little tiny loops, and then you'd loop it, try and get rid of the clicks, and then you'd make that go up and down and in and out like wind. So if you're in a tree, for instance, you need something you need some background music and some creaks and whatever,
Right.
and then you've still got your incidentals, your running sounds, your jumping sounds, your things snapping, throwing, dropping, exploding, whatever it is. So it was just, you have to kind of juggle it quite heftily. There was no freedom, and I never went into the world of Octamed or anything like that. It was just, I don't know, it may be too much to learn too quickly because we were knocking games out at the rate of knots back then. So
Yeah, it was really fast-paced back then. I kind of already learned this, but you got Nathan McCree joined, and he was handling everything on the Sega Genesis, but that wasn't the only thing he did. So I was kind of wondering, like, how did you divvy the work between, like, who got what games between you and
well,
Nathan?
it was all discussed. Nathan was an amazing addition, because the company was growing and I had probably far too much to do for one person. Although I was very good and I work very quickly now. That's what everybody tells me, wow, I can't believe you've done that in that time. But I just kind of get my head down and just go through it. Nathan had much more in the way of, well, I've got no music training, but Nathan has, and he had a lot more knowledge in the way of the kind of the background to actual music writing, the theory of it. So it was, you know, really interesting at the same time, a little bit scary for me to have someone that I felt was maybe more like suited to doing the work. But what ended up happening is we became best friends, and you know, I was really good at doing the production side of things and the sound design and making sure that this was right and coming up with ideas. And then Nathan, if we needed something really rich and complex, he would be the man. I don't know whether a lot of people know this, but I mean, the Asterix soundtrack on the Mega Drive, which Nathan did, I think is it's an incredible piece, like bunch of work. Not only did he write it, he wrote the software to access the FM chip in the Mega Drive. So he actually wrote all of the software that he actually eventually wrote the music on. So that was just incredible. And I still think, I know he did Tomb Raider and what have you, but from a technical and wow point of view, the Asterix stuff was still, I think it's absolutely stunning the way he designed the instruments on that in
Well,
FM.
yeah, it is, but his Skeleton Crew soundtrack, are you familiar with that one at all?
I did Skeleton Crew.
He did it for the Sega Genesis.
Oh, did he do the FM version of it?
Yes.
Yeah, I can't remember that. I did look for it actually.
It is extremely atmospheric and like really leans into the tones you can get from FM, and I think it's one of the most impressive things on the system in general.
Yeah, oh, he was the man. Honestly, I think he entered it too late. It could have been literally the best on that machine, without a doubt. He was so good at writing music, but brilliant at making the sounds. You know, if you listen to, like, again, I go back to the Asterix thing. If you listen to the strings and the horns and things, you know what they are. They're brilliantly programmed instruments. It's very complicated. The modulator stuff in FM synthesis is, you know, beyond most. You know, I work with a lot of additive synths and stuff, and it's just so much easier to work with that. With FM, sometimes I shy away from it still. It's too complicated for my head.
I mean, yeah, I feel the same way. I mean, whenever I try to work with FM, it's still a lot to wrap my head around, especially when you get more than 4 oscillators.
Yeah, the modulated stuff. I used to have a DX7. I've got a DX11 now up there, and I bought the little Korg FM box as well, which is, you know, it kind of does a lot of it for you, really. But yeah, you have to sit down with your machine for like an hour before you start to kind of remember what you're doing. It's not a natural kind of process for me whatsoever.
Yeah. But let's see, you said Nathan had like the more formal musical training, which
Yeah.
I noticed he tends to get the orchestral scores. Is that why? Like, do you shy away from orchestral whenever you see it, or?
No, I mean, I've done my fair share of it as well. I think it happened because of how it kind of, you know, how it developed. When I think one of the first ones he did was, it was this spaceship game. What was that called?
Yeah, Soulstar.
Soulstar. We were like, he had a basement studio at the time, and I had a tiny little room above him. I was doing Premiere, I think, at the time, and he was doing Soulstar downstairs. And I'm sure he did the majority of it on one synth, in Cubase, on an Atari ST, in a tiny mixing desk, and then going straight to DAT. And that was, I remember, like, it was really like a step up when he did that soundtrack, and maybe that was the reason that he was the kind of choice person to do the other stuff, like the Tomb Raider music, and there was a few other soundtracks as well. But I'm not sure his electronic stuff was anywhere near as strong as his, you know, scoring, let's call it. You know, his scoring was just brilliant.
Yeah.
He knew what he was doing with it.
That's kind of how I divided that. You two is like you seem to really excel at the electronic stuff, and Nathan seems to really excel at the orchestral stuff, even though he's
Absolutely.
really good with FM.
Yeah, it's just I think he just had a much more technical brain. I was a bit like gung ho, just go in there and do it, where he was a lot more considered, in his actions and work.
Though that does bring up like who was like divvying up the teams exactly, because it sounded like it came from higher up.
Yeah, I mean, we all kind of worked together as well, in essence. If Nathan was working on something, he'd ask me, what do you think? We were always really proud of what we did, so we wanted each other to hear and we get excited about it. So it was not so much two teams and I got that job and he got that job. There was more going on, there was like 4 games being produced at the same time. So I think in the end, when Nathan was doing Tomb Raider, I was looking after everything else in the company, doing things like BC races and what have you, whatever else that was to be done. I was kind of doing all the other games. But because Tomb Raider was such a kind of important project, their team was, again, it was a lot more considered. They were putting their time and their efforts in a more considered way, where the other games we were just trying to, you know, knock out some good arcaders, you know.
Yeah, okay. That tracks with what I understand, yeah. Something else that happened at Core was you got JD 800 like almost immediately, I think.
Yeah, it would have been maybe about 6 months or so after I started. I kind of scrabbled through with these sound discs I had, and found some sampled CDs and was sampling in from CD. And then, yeah, I needed something because things were growing and I needed a sound source. And we went to the store to see what there was, and there wasn't really a lot in the store at the time. And I saw the JD800. I had to play around with it, and I could sense that I could make what I needed on it. It was quite a diverse synthesizer, where, you know, it was, you know, looked like an analog synthesizer, but it's a digital synth, and it also, you could program it quite easily because it had sliders everywhere. And it wasn't too difficult to understand it, but it also used PCM samples as well, so you could get kind of realistic string sounds or brass sounds out of it at the same time as it being quite electronic. So it was a bit of an all-rounder. Dan also had a keyboard. He had an Ensoniq SQ1, as I remember, which ended up in my studio, and I used that on quite a bit. You know, that was used quite a lot on Wolfchild, actually. The CD version of Wolfchild. And then Ken, what was his name now? He left Core actually quite early on. Great guy. He was a bit of a technician, had a really nice car, but he was also a musician. And he had a Korg Poly 800 and something, and a Yamaha CX5, and he just kind of popped them in my studio as well. So I had a few, you know, things I could use to make sounds with, basically.
So these were synths that you got to work on your soundtracks at Core.
Yeah.
Because I noticed you use them heavily outside of Core as well, with like your Demoscene stuff.
Well, I just kind of, you know, I guess we used to stay at work until whatever time, you know, just making demos anyway, because what was the point of going all the way home to do exactly what we could do if we were sat there? We were young and we didn't really care, so, you know, we would either go home and do some music with a disc in our pocket, or we could stay at work and do it. So we, you know, it kind of crossed over, really. I mean, in the end, I think I bought a Yamaha DX21 was my first synth, and then I bought a Moog Rogue. That was my second synth, and they kind of got used at work. I just brought everything into work because essentially I had a slightly, you know, more interesting studio setup there, so I kind of piled everything together so I had more gear to work on and to kind of, you know, get a bit more inspired.
Yeah, because of that overlap, I was wondering if you like the JD was something you brought from home into work or the other way around.
No, they bought it for work, and it ended up staying there. So yeah, it was a work purchase. I couldn't afford it. It was £1,600, as I remember. Yeah, back then in 1992.
Yeah, I forget that keyboards are expensive. We just get those free soft synths these days.
I've got a few of those as well. I tend not to use them so much, but yeah, they're good. So yeah, the good old JD800. It ended up dying. Its brain dissolved, and I handed it to a synth repair guy called Kent Spong down in the south of England, and just said, have it. It's going to cost too much to repair it. Take it and use the parts for, you know, other repairs. Went to a good
sad
home.
end.
A sad end. It got so used though. It was such a workhorse.
Really was, yeah. Um, Wanted to talk a little bit about Wonderdog, because I think that came about because JVC approached Core
That's right, yeah.
for like they wanted a mascot or something.
Exactly. So they wanted the mascot to launch
Wonder Mega.
the Wonder Mega, hence Wonderdog.
Yeah.
And the Wonder Mega was you've probably seen pictures of it, the big grey. It's a karaoke machine essentially. On the front panel, it had a slider. I still got mine in my attic. It had a slider on the front, like a door, like a little weird door, and it had all the settings for plugging microphones and headphones in, and it came with some karaoke discs as well, and so you could put your CDs in and you could sing along to it. You know, it had a Mega Drive slot for the cartridges, and it also had a CD for the Mega CD, so that's in Sega CD stuff. So that was really interesting. It was nice working on Wonderdog. It was like, again, it was the better of one of the better platformers we did. I think I enjoyed writing the music for that because we decided to make it quite warm and chunky rather than kind of, you know, whatever else, but we wanted to kind of make it a little bit more cuter and smaller, a bit more Nintendo-esque in a way. But it was a great machine.
Yeah, what caught my interest though was like, it seems like these people approached you very shortly after you joined Core, and they wanted like a Red Book soundtrack, and I think that was the first one you did, maybe?
Yeah, I think it might have been. Yes, it was, because it had the song with the whistle in it. And that was off the JD 800 actually. Very annoying tune I came up with. Yeah, because we didn't do it side by side. I can't remember whether we did it, because we did Wonderdog on the other devices as well, and then we did it.
Yeah, it started on the Sega CD or the Wonder Mega, and then like a year later you ported it to the Amiga.
That's right, yeah, so we did the CD first. Thanks for that help on that. As you can see, I'm quite sketchy on my memory. Yeah, it was really interesting. That was it's all coming back to me now. So I'd moved upstairs on the same floor as the management in Tradesman's house, which is our first building. I'm getting it all back now. And there's a funny story in there. Chris, one of my good friends, he was the coder for Wonderdog and lots of other really good games, Chuck Rock 2. And he was really into this opera singer. And when I moved up to that room to do which was essentially now my studio, to do the Wonderdog music, I used to, you know, take the mickey out of him for liking this particular opera singer, and I think I got on his nerves so much with it because I just wouldn't stop. I came into work one day and my entire studio was covered in tiny pictures of her, like literally everything: the carpet, my chair, the walls, the TV, the monitor, the Atari ST, the Amiga, even inside of the Amiga memory port had her pictures everywhere. It was literally, it took me like the whole day to remove all the pictures, but that was the kind of stuff that we got up to at Core Design. But yeah, I remember doing that music using Steinberg 24 for the first time. I still use Cubase now, and it was my first time doing MIDI music, so not having numbers in front of me and samples I could very, very easily control. I had synthesizers playing things live into a small mixing desk that went into a DAT machine. That was all very, very bizarre to me. It felt very loose and baggy, and I couldn't control it properly because it was a fresh, absolutely fresh thing that I'd never ever experienced before. But you know, as we do, I got used to it really, really quickly. A couple of months in, and yeah, it started to kind of feel a bit more like home, making music like that. And to be honest, after the next couple of soundtracks, I think after Premiere and Blastar and something else, I think we stopped using the Amiga. I do remember going back into the Amiga to have to do the Fighting Force music for the SNES. Alex, who was the programmer on Fighting Force on the SNES, wrote a program that could import mods from Noise Tracker at the time. So I think that might have been one of the very last things I did. Maybe a couple of demos after it, and then it was it. That was it. Finished.
I didn't realize Fighting Force came out on the SNES.
Yeah, it was a difficult one for us. I think it's one of the only SNES, if not the only SNES game we did. And it wasn't easy because we had a whole new rule book, basically.
Oh, yeah.
So we had a small team that had to just learn it and do it the Nintendo way, you know, where we could, you know, bend the background and all that kind of stuff that Nintendo was cool at. But essentially we used modules, so we had like a bank of samples that the module pulled the samples in from the SNES. There's no, you know, we used a bit of reverb because it had built-in reverb. That was amazing.
Reverb is a generous term, but yeah.
Well, yeah, some echoes. It was still quite amazing back then to be able to tail something off, you know.
But yeah, you joined Core and very quickly switched to the you went from Amiga to the Atari ST and all the MIDI details and stuff. Like I've worked with like trackers and MIDI like that, and they're just completely different experiences.
Mm-hmm.
So I was kind of like wondering, like, what was your perspective being, you know, shifting formats like that so suddenly?
It wasn't nice. You know, it's not like, oh, we're going into the studio and we're going to use this software. So it was like, we've got to do it like this and get to work. And it's like, I had no idea what I was doing. There wasn't, you know, YouTube back then, so I couldn't
Yeah,
look up
exactly.
how does that work? Oh, I need a tip. No. So you end up, I guess it's a good thing. You end up using the software and the synthesizers the way that you do, and that makes it very personal. But like I said, previously, it felt baggy. It felt loose. It wasn't particularly pleasant to feel almost like there was no control over what I was doing in a way. You know,
Yeah,
with a module, you've got a fixed pattern, and it just loops and loops and loops for as many times as you want it to until you change to another one. And then having some linear editing page, which is built of blocks, which you've got stuff inside of it. Yes, that kind of made sense to me because you could, you know, put a kick drum 4 times and then copy it, you know.
right.
But it was just like it was really linear, you know. It was super fixed before, but this was like, well, I can actually play that sound forever if I want to, really. You know, it felt really loose, like, whoa, like I'm falling into the void of this new music production thing. I don't know, but I get, you know, overall I got quite used to it quite quickly, and then I bought a Korg X5DR, small like sound canvas thing, and then I bought a D20 or D10, I can't remember, Roland synth, and I started kind of building songs at home as well. I bought an Atari ST, and I started building songs at home with just these couple of things. With the Korg, it was multi-timbral, so you could have your drums on channel 1 and bass on channel 2, and it would deal with quite a lot of sounds. And then I had the Roland doing something else, and I would borrow the DAT machine from work so I could record what I was doing. And it became a bit of a hobby then, making music at home. And then I just got really, really into it. At this point, I'd started to kind of listen to music. I'd been to a couple of festivals to see music live, and making music like that became second nature. Cubase became like really easy for me to dip in and out of, and you know, I'd have a mixing desk and I'd just work on one song at a time. I'd turn everything off, come the next day, load everything up. It would all be there, very safe and sound. And yeah, eventually I think, you know, I just became really comfortable with it. And again, you know, I think that's another reason I stopped writing music on the computer, because there were huge limitations where I was now finding out that this void that I was falling into was controllable, and that I could literally do, you know, so much more in that. And it took my brain away from the games a little bit, to be honest. You know, I was really interested in actually making music for, I guess, myself and general consumption, rather than it being a soundtrack to something.
Yeah, I think you said that by 1995 you were DJing.
Yeah,
I
I'd
think
started DJing.
multiple people at Core were DJing, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, there's a few of us. Yeah, we used to. So, so we had friends over in Leamington Spa that worked for. I can't remember the name of the company now. But they really cool, lovely people. They were really good friends of ours, and we met them through Dell, as in Dell Gilchrist, who worked at Core, and Joby Wood. They worked with these guys prior to coming to Core. So we just kind of blended friends. It was really nice. And two of the guys there, one was called Toby, and I think the other guy was Craig or Greg, I can't remember. But they were absolutely amazing DJs, and they were really into like hip hop and trip hop and acid jazz and stuff like that. It blew my mind going over there. We used to go over there, you know, order pizzas and then go to the pub and have a dance, and then come back to their place, and they just play music all night.
So that was your introduction to like acid,
Yeah,
like trip hop and stuff like that?
exactly, and DJing as well. And we'd all be just sat there playing Street Fighter in the background, and these guys are DJing. It was like heaven. It was such a cool place to visit. And they became really good friends, and we stayed friends with them for a long, long time. But I just made me want to get decks. So I bought myself a couple of like belt drive decks, and they were terrible. So I saved up some money and bought myself some Technics, which I still have to this day. And then started buying records, and then got good at it, and then got a job DJing in town in a bar, and started to get my music to people. And then a friend of mine said, why don't you send your music off to this record label in Nottingham? And I said, oh no, it's not ready, I'm not ready. He said, do it. So I did it, and they signed my record straight away. And then I did an album for them, and that was picked up by Kayun in Japan, which are owned by Sony. So it was all quite an organic flow of music for me. I didn't really, you know, plan on it going that way, but it did. But the DJing, you know, I still DJ now, so it's a really cool thing. It's really nice to be able to kind of be the selector of the tunes, and be respected for it. I guess, you know, it's a weird profession.
Yeah, how did you transition from like the guy that writes Amiga music at Core to the guy who's, you know, running the dance floor as a DJ?
Well, like I said, it's like it was releasing music, so there was quite a massive crossover period of about 8 or 9 years, I think it was. So I was working at Core, lots of hours, lots of work, but I was young, and I'd go home and I'd make music. Now I wouldn't get home till 10 o'clock at night sometimes, but I'd still make music till 2 or 3 in the morning, and get up for work and go to work the next day. So I got really into like just it became super addictive, like playing a video game or something. I just wanted to make more tunes because I was getting better every time I did it. I ended up buying a sampler. I ended up buying an Akai sampler after that, which I still have back here, exactly the same one. In fact, you can see it. That's that one there. That's the Akai S3000 XL, and the same DAT machine I've always had here.
Barely see it, but yeah.
Yeah, they're just, you can see the white unit anyway.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that kit was allowed me to again expand what I was doing. I wasn't just like a keyboard box and another keyboard. I had a sampler, and then I bought a mixing desk because I was getting paid money. At this point, I'd saved up enough to kind of buy myself a few things, and I was still working at Core, working hard, and I worked there for a long, long time while I was really into doing music, meeting new friends, making tunes, messing around, going to the pub, as you do. And then, like I say, my friend said, send some music off to DIY in Nottingham, so I did. And they picked it up straight away. And I did a remix for them, for one of their songs. And then they said, we want you to do an album. So I did an album, and then I got the publisher interested in London. I'm still with that publisher now, all these years on. And they got my friends from Derby, John Raitt and his wife Rieko Akatsuka. Rieko was it's a Japanese lady. She was at university here. She had some contacts, and I think she hooked us up with a few people in Japan. And it was because of her father, who was a really famous Japanese artist, a guy called Fujio Akatsuka from Fujio Pro, who's essentially like
they were related. Huh.
It was her dad. So
I was not expecting that.
Yeah. So Fujio Akatsuka is like Walt Disney in Japan. And I'm the only person that's ever been allowed to use his artwork outside of their business, and they've turned down, all the big companies, Coca-Cola, etc. So off the back of that, the album got a lot of attention in Japan. Also did really well in Europe and America, and then it got picked up in Italy by a label called Irma. Then they started asking me to do remixes. Then my name started getting out. And at this point, I was like, this is after I'd started my own record label, actually, as well, because when I sent my music off to the label, a friend of mine and I, who I roughly explained to you in a message, started Mantis Recordings as a let's just put some music out kind of thing. We don't know what we're doing. We're not business people. You don't think about that. You just put music out. So we did a record release, and we got a distribution deal in London with the same distributor that distributed some of the cool music that we were into, which was nice. I started releasing music as Atjazz, and then it got really busy. And then I got an office, and I was still working at Core. So I was working at Core from 9 till 5. Then I was going across town to my other office and working from 7 till 3. And I did that for about 8-9 years, and built up my studio, and built up my profile and my existence as an actual music artist. And then I started DJing within that time as well, obviously. And then I started getting interest from overseas and from London, and started to travel around a little bit. And now I've been all over the place, for what's it now? Over 25 years, 26, 27 years I've been doing it now. So, it was. Again, it's like an organic move. I was handed an opportunity by myself, I guess, to do something else, turn another corner. I never for one moment thought I'd ever leave core design. I thought I was going to be there until I was, 100 years old. So there was no, I've got a plan in action. I had no plan. It just happened. And in 2004, when things started to go a bit fruity at core design and things started to kind of dissolve, I jumped out. I just left it behind and went full time with Mantis and Atjazz, and did a bit of freelance work for both what turned into Rebellion and split off with Circle Studios. So that's the kind of transition. It was hectic.
Yeah, I kind of jumped ahead to something else. I remember in an interview you said you can't make music without having a day job or something like that.
No, not necessarily. Well, my point being, I look after a lot of artists, and they, quite a few of them have asked me, should I give up my day job to just go into music? And my answer is, well, what are you going to use for money? I had a day job while I was building my career until the point where my career was paying me enough money to not have my day job anymore. So that's my point. You know, if in music, unless you become very popular very quickly, there is no money. It's just your emotions, and you're trying to sell them to the world. So,
Right.
you know, for me to have a job it enabled me to, build up what I've got.
Yeah,
You
I
know,
was just wondering, like, what was the tipping point that made you decide to leave core and focus entirely on your label?
well, it was getting busy. I think I definitely released my second album, Lab Funk, and that did really, really well. And I got a lot of interest from all over the place, and I started touring, and you know, it was very exciting. You know, being able to go out and perform in front of hundreds, if not thousands, of people, and do what you do, and people love it, and you get paid really well for it. Um, at the same time, core design was coming to its natural, finish point, as far as I saw. You know, it was sad to see it kind of break down. But the rise and fall of Tomb Raider, essentially from 1 to 6, it's bound to, if a company isn't kind of prepared to deal with it, it's bound to collapse. And I think that's what happened. I think it seemed that I could have maybe stayed at Core Stroke Rebellion for a year or two, but I didn't want to, I guess, have a nasty shock and lose my job one day. So I chose the opportunity to leave while things were going well. I guess it was a big jump. I can't believe I actually had the brain power or the mind to do that. But yeah, for leaving home at 17 to go and work in a dream situation, and then walking out of it 13, 14 years later, whatever it was it's quite hectic. But it needed to happen. It needed to happen. I got more in me, and I don't want to just, the stress of working at Core at the end was really high. You'd be working 3 days in a row. I remember once I worked like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and then about 3 o'clock or something on the Wednesday, we could go home because we were right at the end of a project, and we were sending it off for testing. It was coming backwards and forwards, and I put a pan of soup on in the house, and I woke up at like 6 o'clock, and I had a thin line of smoke through the house because I'd passed out because I was exhausted, and I could have set my house on fire, and that things like that. And that was nothing to do with me being Atjazz, because I couldn't even do the Atjazz stuff while I was working that heftily at the end of a project at Core. I had to put that on hold. So it was just, one thing led to another, and I just chose something that I could be in full control of, I guess.
Yeah, okay, makes sense. I wanted to jump like way back though, because we kind of skipped a bunch of stuff ahead that I wanted to ask about.
Hmm.
Um, After you did Wonderdog like on the Sega CD, a year later you did it on the Amiga, and when I was looking at those modules, I noticed something interesting. Usually when you're writing an Amiga module, you have each row represents like a 30-second note or something like that.
Hmm.
Like you can see the time signature laid out like the drum machine style.
Hmm.
With Wonderdog, it wasn't like that. It had like a
A break.
not even a break. It was like divisible by 7. I don't remember what it was exactly, but you basically had a
Well, it goes down to like 47 and then jumps to the next pattern, right?
yeah.
It's so that you could get the tempo at a specific nice, 105 BPM or whatever, but you had more space to do shuffles. So instead of everything going da 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 da, you could go da 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 da
Yeah,
da da da.
exactly.
So you had time to kind of shuffle your notes, which was like really, really nice to do. But it happened by accident, you know. I can't remember when it first happened, to be honest. It may have even been looking at someone else's module and going, "Oh my God, yeah, they've broke it there. How 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, you know, one, breaking it down. It's almost like doing it in triplets. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yes, it's 6. So it's in 6. It's in 3. Yeah, like 6 3 or something. But like you can then you put an extra bit on the end. So you get like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then you do it 4 times. So yeah, it just it let you have a shuffle that you couldn't do otherwise.
Yeah, it was the first time I've seen a septuplet groove in an Amiga module, and I was really surprised by that.
I think Heatbeat used to do it.
Hmm.
That may be where I got the idea from.
I haven't
He
actually studied his module, so I couldn't tell you, but
He's super cool. He's one of the best. Him and Bruno were the absolute nuts. They were so good.
yeah, that fascinated me, and I was very curious where you got it from. But it sounds like you're not even sure either.
Yeah, I think it might have been like looking at maybe a Heatbeat module and then working out, because I used to think, how do you get your music that tempo, but and put a shuffle in it? So I was doing my tempo at super high speeds to try, and then you've got more space to kind of push your second notes, so you could have like a skippy kind of beat. Matt Simmons did something similar, but it was a bit more clunky and a bit straighter. And I think I remember seeing a Heatbeat module and going, like, how does that work? It's stopping. I can remember 47 or 48 or something, and that would be the break in the bar, and then it would go back. But it also, it was lovely to write at that tempo with having that kind of bounce to it. It really was quite inspiring, rather than you know, or
Yeah.
it was flowing quite, because if you look at them, the tempo is quite high, so it kind of floats through the bars quite quickly, but you get such more of a flowing feel from the music, and that it was just really attractive to me.
Yeah, it's subtle, but it's there. You feel it.
Yeah, exactly.
Another thing that happened early on at Core was Thundershock and Battle Core. Uh, Anthony Wheeldon did live guitar in both of those.
Yeah, Anthony, amazing guy.
Was that like your first time working with live instruments, or how did that
Yeah,
work out?
yeah, it was actually. So it was Thunderhawk, wasn't it? Thunderhawk one
Yeah.
and two, the helicopter simulator thing, and then Battlecore. Same team actually. Jason and Mac and myself. With Thunderhawk, we wanted to do something mildly military, but not really military, but kind of rocky, but not really rocky. So something in the middle of all of that kind of thing. And I was listening to quite a lot of, like, you know, band stuff at the time. So it just me and Anthony was a friend anyway. We were kind of messing around, jamming, and I said to my boss, you know, could we get Anthony to play some guitar on? He was like, I'd love that. How much? And gave him a price, and he said, yeah, cool, let's do that. So he became a little bit of a fixture for a few years. So every time, you know, I think it was like 1, 2, was it 3 games he might have played on? I think it might just be those 3.
Yeah, I think it is.
Yeah. But he's played on my Atjazz stuff a couple of times as well. I don't really get to see him anymore. He lives in Portugal now. But yeah, he was great. He was lovely to work with because he was such a great player. He ended up going to jazz college and going down the jazz route. and he played in a band called State of Grace, which were a huge band. He just had this kind of understanding of the instrument, and he was really good at playing funk, rock, leads. He understood the instrument, how to get sustain and nice distortion. He had a great wah pedal, so we could do a little bit of everything, you know. And it was all recorded live onto DAT. There was no kind of recording into the computer because we had no option.
Yeah, that was my next question.
We had no option to do it. We had no recording software. So it was like MIDI playback with Anthony going through the channel of the desk, press record, go. And we might have to do it 4 or 5 times, and we just go with the best take. So he was an absolute ninja because of that old school recording technique.
Yeah, a couple of years later, I forget which album it was. I think it was your second album. You also had a bunch of live musicians. I think that was the second time you worked with live musicians.
Yeah, well, on Lab Funk, it was primarily Peter Rate.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Yeah, so Peter was the brother of John, who was the wife of Rieko, who was the daughter of Fujio.
That's quite a connection there. Yeah.
Yes. So basically, Peter's a really amazing jazz player, and he lived in the city. So it was he ended up he was working with Charles Webster and Herbert at the time, Matthew Herbert, and then he started working with me as well. And yeah, we did loads of stuff. We did the Lab Funk album, and then we did Full Circle as well, and we did loads of like gigs in Barcelona at Sonar Festival and in Germany, all over the place. We in Midem with Mr. Scruff and Ronnie Size and people like that. That was really, yeah, it was a good time to have a live trumpet player when you're DJing. But it also gave us the opportunity to play the tunes off the album as well, and he played the lines off that and stuff. So a bit like doing a live kind of performance.
Mr. Scruff, like wasn't he like an artist at Ninja Tune?
Yeah.
So I'm surprised. Yeah, I think you.
Well, we just DJ'd together at the Midem Festival in France.
Oh, okay.
So it was like myself, Mr. Scruff, and Ronnie Size on a stage, you know, one after another kind of thing. So it was good fun.
Yeah, you ended up working with Mr. Scruff for that 2007 game, Free Running.
Yeah, we did some licensing in for that one. So basically, they wanted a soundtrack, but then they wanted. I think they were kind of going down the GTA route of like, we want some music that's kind of popular as well, and some artists that we might know, you know. So we went with as much stuff as we could that they could afford. They had a budget for licensing. So we licensed in. We had a massive list that we had to kind of shorten down. But it was just so, because you had like, you know, not like almost like a CD player in the game, so you could choose your tunes as you were playing and stuff like that, you know. Old school Outrun vibe.
Yeah, I was surprised by some of the names I saw because Luke Vibert was also on there.
Yeah.
Like, how did you manage that? Just licensing?
But yeah, just licensing. I mean, you contact the record company and say, we're doing a video game, we want to license this song, this is the offer. And they either go for it or they don't, or they counter offer, and you come to an agreement or you don't. And that's it. It's just like a buyout fee on both sides, on a master and publishing.
So it's not like you were in the studio with Luke Vibert or anything?
No, none of them.
Okay.
It was just literally licensing music that they'd already released prior.
Okay. Let's see. 1995, you did Skeleton Crew on the Amiga and the CD32, I think it was.
Mm-hmm.
Those soundtracks were really interesting to me because prior to that, you had like a very like, you know, smooth style, but then Skeleton Crew came along and you have breaks and hip hop.
Well, Simon, the artist, was really super into hip hop. Like he just used to listen to iCube and Dr. Dre all day. So his natural go-to was, you know, But he had really good taste in hip hop, and he wanted to do a kind of semi hip hop soundtrack, a bit spooky and a bit dark and a bit hip hop esque. So yeah, we went down that route. Not 100% sure that that game fully worked for me. Isometric games are kind of, I think they were a bit of a thing of the past at that point. But it was an interesting thing to work on, that's for sure.
Yeah, it sounded like you just discovered DJ Crush. And was like going for that style.
Oh, massively into DJ Crush and Shadow and all that Moax stuff. I've got an enormous Moax collection of stuff, and Attica Blues, all those guys. So it was absolutely, that's where my head was, although his head was in Ice Cube and Dr. Dre. So I was trying to kind of make it maybe a little bit more cool, if you know what I mean. But I'm not sure that it fully kind of worked out. It sounded all right.
I think it sounded great, especially it sounded surprising coming from the Amiga.
Yeah, it's because a lot of sampling, I was like, at that point I was quite good at, looping and sampling, and I had a sampler at home and I was doing sampling all the time. So, yeah, probably then.
Yeah, at this point were you like making music at home?
I think that's when I was making music at home. Maybe the Amiga stuff went on further than I remember.
Yeah, this was very late era Amiga, like the last couple of things.
Yeah, it was, yeah.
So I'm trying to like piece together like what were you doing at home compared to this? Like wasn't this about the time you're like DJing as well?
Yeah, it would have been. Yeah, because if I was into Crush and Shadow and stuff like that, then it would have definitely been crossing over. Although I don't know how far into my DJ career I was. It might have been quite early on, but it would have been fully influenced by that.
How much stuff were you making like initially before I think you said somebody encouraged you to submit your music to a label.
Yeah, I've got a couple of DATs worth, I guess 3 hours worth of music or something that I'd kind of thrown together. I wrote an album, which I still have in a box over there, called Un pincé de sal, which is like a pinch of salt in French. And a really good friend of mine, Clive, who works with me on the label as well. He not long before this had been in London at a music studio in Islington, where he was training up, and his friend Ian still worked there as an engineer. And we got a day in the studio when the studio had downtime to go and run my album through a big massive SSL desk and through loads of equipment. And that was before I did the music that I'd sent to the label in Nottingham, because I didn't feel that was up to scratch for general consumption, if you know what I mean. So but yeah, it was it's really hard to remember what order all of this stuff happened in.
Yeah, that happens.
Because it's just kind of cluttered, because I was just kind of, as we all do, clambering through life. But it was all around the same time. It would have been around 1994, 1995 when all of this kind of stuff had happened. So, because that's definitely around the time that, it was just before I sent my music, just before I made my first record, which was after the Skeleton Crew 12-inch, which was a bit weird. And then I pressed Story EP, and then the DIY record came out. So it was in that order. And Story was taken from the Un pincé de sal album. That was the piece of music I felt that was good enough to release. So yeah, end of 94, beginning of 95 kind of area, that's when all that kind of stuff happened.
That
which is weird.
explains
I've just put a
something.
date
Yeah.
to it.
Because I noticed the your first release was like 2 remixes of a song, and I don't know where the original came from.
What was that on the
That was
on
Story.
the? Yes, the story was like the slow version of it was taken from the album, and then I did like a locale mix, and then Clive did a like a hip hop mix, and then there was another song called Going Somewhere, which is one of the songs which was written on the X5DR and the D10. D10, that's what it was, a Roland D10. So all of that was quite basic, really, but you know, interesting to do so much with so little, if you know what I mean. So
Yeah,
I still sell that record.
I don't feel like the limitations were apparent when you just listen to the music.
No, you know, I think when you listen to someone like Square Pusher and they didn't have as much equipment, then you can hear the limitations because they were like whew, out of this world amazing producers with quite a small amount of kit.
Yeah, I find it interesting that you were just like sitting on this stuff and you decided it's not worth sharing, so nobody's gonna hear it, and then nobody hears it.
It's the best albums in the world. You know, you make them and then delete them. No, it's just, you know, it sounds like it's unfinished. You know, story was done. It felt like it was done. I could do something with it. The rest of it is like beats and chords, and you know, maybe I could make a beat tape one day and just put it on Bandcamp, where it's just, you know, 2-minute loops of what was that album. But I'm not sure. I've never even recorded it into my computer off that yet, so it only, apart from story, it all exists only on that tape. So
My own philosophy is that it's interesting, at least as a way to look back at your own growth and development and what you were doing and what you were thinking at the time, even if it's incomplete.
hmm
So I would say, yeah, preserve it, share it with other
oh,
people, but
I'll have to, when I've got 5 minutes. I'm definitely going to have to record it in because I don't want it to be just sat on a DAT tape to eventually disintegrate.
yeah.
I've got a couple of copies of it.
Yeah, something else from your first couple of albums. On That Something, you had a track titled Joystick.
hmm
Was that somebody else's entirely, or like a collaboration, or what was that?
Oh no, that was with me and Andrew Brooks. Brooks's artist name was. That's actually quite interesting because we used a Commodore 64 for the drum sounds,
Huh.
which is the. It's really crunchy sounds.
Yeah, yeah.
We dug a 64 out and we had like a little tiny bit of software in it where we could get sounds that we could play. I can't even remember what that was. And so we took the samples from the Commodore 64, then we used the Akai to overdub them with some stronger samples. Then I know that song quite well. Then I had a Poly 61. I have a Poly 61M now, which is the MIDI version, but I had a Poly 61 at the time, and a Kawai R100 drum machine. And it only has you can trigger the arpeggiator. So every time you start the song, it always starts somewhere else in the sequence. So joystick, that take of joystick would never be, well, it could possibly be the same again, but the bass line started at that particular point when we did the take on the desk that we wanted to keep. So yeah, and then we took a sample from an old breakdance record as well, as I remember, off a 7-inch. Yeah, it was funny doing joystick. It's a funny song.
It stuck out because it was like the most synthetic and like electronic edged song on that album.
Yeah, it's quite techy.
So I was
It's
wondering
got
if
a,
there's a reason for that. And it's also the only link to like the fact you were doing video game music too.
yeah, I guess so. I mean, Brooks was quite young. I mean, how old was I? 20, what would have been 97? Yeah, 97 when that was written. So I would have been around 24 or something, is that right? No, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22. And he was young. I think he was only about 15 or 16 at the time. He was the younger brother of our friend David, who was a really good DJ. But Andrew was at college, and I think he was doing music at college, which was close to my house. So it was like we had this kid Wonder doing this amazing music in the studio. He did a release for DIY as well, and that did okay as well. But I just wanted to do something with it because he was really fresh in the way he worked, and he was the one that I think came up with the idea for doing the Commodore 64. So I don't even think that the connection with video games is there with that. It wasn't my idea. It was totally his idea. I'm trying to think. You've got me thinking now. Have I done anything that is related to any of the music that I think? And I don't think there is anything that. Wind and Sea, maybe. The only piece of music that I can say is a bit like Outrun. You know, it's got that kind of breezy feel to it. I mean, overall, there's got to be a connection. I don't particularly think there's one that I think my brain can connect to.
Conscious connection, right?
It's not a conscious thing, no, but you know, it came from that, so it has to be connected, you know.
Yeah.
I just wanted to make consumable music rather than doing stuff for video games, essentially.
What's the difference, do you think?
Being a music artist, really, it's freeing. You know, I'm not working for somebody. I don't have any rules. I don't have any, regulations. I reap what I sow. All of the thing, it is entirely under my control what I do. So that feels really good, although it's incredibly scary when you get broke and you've got no money and no one's buying your house beats. But it's, it's forwarding. And I believe even with my next album, it's moving on vastly forward from where I am now. And I've done a lot now, I've done literally hundreds of remixes, like 400, 500, 600 remixes, and collaborated on God knows how many songs and released God knows how many albums. And done, but the thing about sound is I'm incredibly addicted to making sound and producing sound and listening to sound and recording sound, and I find it fascinating. It's constantly and being able to control it, because I'm good at controlling it. That's the key. Charlie Dark, actually, from Attica Blues, another one of the artists from back in the day, DJ Crush, DJ Shadow, Attica Blues. Charlie said to me when I was online once, he said, how do you keep going? And I said, I think I'm just really addicted to sound. It's what I really love, from the early days of playing Delta on a Atari joystick, but stopping the tape so I could just sit and play with the music. It's still the same today. It's still the same today. I'm no less interested in music or sound per se.
I'm wondering, what parts of sound do you find interesting? Like the tonality, like how synths are constructed, or like the harmony, like how music is constructed, or both, or what?
I've often thought, should I have piano lessons? Should I learn some basics? I know enough basics. I've been playing keyboard since I was 6 years old, but I don't have a lesson to tell me that I've done it right or not. I do have a lot of very talented friends who are incredible keyboard players. Some are the best in the world, but I don't want to learn too much because I might lose what I've made. If I start to know the rules, I might start using the rules, and I don't work to the rules. Hence, I have a sound of my own, and that's what I'm known for. And I think that I constantly, and I've said this to some young producers in South Africa, they say, how do you know when your song's ready? I think you have to be honest with yourself constantly when you're making music, like a visual artist. You need to know when to draw a line under something when it's done. I believe you need to if your own song doesn't give you goosebumps, there's something wrong with it. It's not right. And I've done a few that aren't right, but I've done a lot more that are right. So, you know, it's. I don't think you're ever there. I don't think you're ever complete in music. I think it's just you do it until you die, and when you die, that's when you die, and what you've done is what you've done. You're never that good at it. You know, there aren't so many Quincy Joneses in the world. But I believe that I really like just creating sounds almost that I've never really heard before. Something new. There's also, if I hear something I've never heard before, my head always turns. So that's why I like jazz so much, because harmonically it's just all over the place. One thing I can't listen to is regular guitar pop music. It really bores me, like it's torture sometimes. You know, 3 chords and a vocal and a wimpy drum kit. It's not enough for me. It's really like it's the absolute opposite end of the spectrum. That's not the sound I like to hear, or the music I want to make. You know, not saying it's good, not good. That's not for me to say, but I don't feel attracted to it. Where, you know, if I turn a synth on and start to find something, and then I hit a harmonic that I've never heard before, I know I've got the sound I need to use. And it's that constant search and create, search and create, search and create that I think keeps me interested, and what's always attracted me to making music. And I think, you know, like anything, to be able to make a piece of music and go, have a listen to that, I made this noise that's actually harmonically okay and has a rhythm to it, you might like it, and getting good feedback and accolades for that over the years is a really nice feeling, because it's really hard to do it. It's not easy to do it. So yeah, I find it is, I think it's definitely my calling to make noise in life, that's for sure.
That makes me kind of surprised that you're not more into FM synthesis, because there's so many weird things to explore with that.
I'm into it, but it scares me. I just don't understand it, so sometimes I give up. It's like I've had enough for a minute, you
Oh
know.
yeah, I see what you mean. So does that mean you're into
I
like,
love it. You know, the guys, my kids have got two. I bought them the synthesizer I had as a kid. It's the Yamaha PSS 680, and it's got a mild synthesizer on it. It's all FM based anyway, but it's a mild synthesizer. It's got the attack. It's got a bit of feedback on it, etc., etc. And it's absolutely amazing. When you put it in the studio and listen to it, it's like, well, that just sounds like a DX7. You know, actually, that's the kind of sound that the sounds and all these lovely kind of. The thing about FM, it's one of the sounds I'm drawn to, because of the way that you can make it sound very tubular, very hollow. You can make it sound incredibly smooth. Like the sine waves you can get from FM, for some reason, just sound so controlled compared to something like a Moog or a Korg or something. And that's what I do love about it. You know, like I said, the first synth I ever bought was a DX21. No idea what I was doing with it, but after playing with it for an hour or two, I could get some decent sounds out of it, and I'd saved them so that I didn't lose them.
I found an old interview, I think 2017, where you gave somebody like a list of songs that inspire you, I think it was. And it was stuff like
Hmm.
Herbie Hancock, Paul Metheny, I think is how you pronounce
Mhm.
his name.
Pat Metheny,
Pat
yeah.
Metheny, yeah. Uh, a lot of like jazz cuts and not like production focused things.
Well, they kind of are, and they kind of aren't. Nathan actually introduced me to Pat Metheny, because he's heavily influenced by him as well. And the piano player Lyle Mays, who sadly died a couple of years ago,
Yeah.
he was phenomenal at making synthesizers sound great. And with Herbie Hancock, again, it is a kind of production thing, because he went through from being a very young man working through with Art Blakey and Miles Davis and whoever else, through all the big boys, into doing his own thing as a young pianist. And then he literally was like drawn to synthesizers when they started coming out. So You know, for a while didn't really. I was so into what Herbie was doing in the early 70s, that when he moved into the 80s, I was like, oh no, what's all this? It sounds like, you know, Paul Hardcastle. You know, you're Herbie Hancock. You should be doing stuff on an ARP Odyssey and making things sound squelchy and beautiful and playing on your Rhodes piano and, you know, all that kind of beautiful stuff I was super into, like albums like Secrets and Manchild and all that kind of stuff. But when he started to go more into the world of digital, I didn't like it so much, but I absolutely love it now. But so I do think that with Herbie Hancock, if you listen to his music against another artist, you can hear the production values are very, very high. They're super high. He was working with Quincy Jones as well, obviously. And then, yeah, like Pat Metheny and Lyle Mays, they used really beautiful studios to make their music. And they were so, you know, it might be jazz, but at the end of the day, it sounds absolutely stunning. That's what I love about it. I listen to it, and it's the kind of music that I can't pull apart. I don't want to. I want to listen to it from beginning to end. And that's, again, you know, why it kind of inspires me to be better, because I can listen to all of their music and still find something interesting in one of the songs that I'll never be able to do myself. I'll never be able to work that out, especially in like the way that Lyle Mays plays keyboards and the harmonics and the different tuning he uses, and it's just mind-bendingly interesting to me. And it's the kind of music I go to when I'm stressed or when I'm having to do loads of admin for the label. Or I just put that Pat Metheny on in the background, and it literally centers me down so I can work. And again, you know, it's the music that works for me.
Yeah, I'm trying to like pinpoint exactly what it is you like about sound, because it's if you just like new sounds and you'd be all like into like harsh noise or breakcore or something, but that's not your thing.
No, I like things to sound, you know, perfect, I guess, you know, for me. I like things to sound perfect, especially these days. You know, I was a right scruffy old producer back in the day, especially doing the computer stuff. It could have been a much higher production value, if you ask me, compared to some of the other guys out there, like Maniacs and Noise and whoever else were writing modules, were just absolutely phenomenal. Compared to what I was doing was like, you know, not good really. But I strive for my own perfection. You know, a kick drum has to sit right. I'm very. Everyone's like, "Oh, can you send me your kick drums?" I don't have any. I always make new ones. You know, I have recently done a sample pack which has a load of my kick drums in. But you know, they're suited to the songs. They're made for the songs. They've moved out the way for that, and then moved back in and joined it. And you know, it's just that it's what happens when you're producing and you're mixing and you do it all yourself. You tend to kind of pull things apart and put them back together. But I tend to like very quite complex chords that are rich and smooth, and surprising chords that are emotionally jarring, that you know that throw you from left to right and make you feel nice, or you know, or a bit broken, you know, or even listening to Thelonious Monk, really old-fashioned mono recordings of him just tapping his foot and playing a piano. It has its time and its place for me, but I think I'm super heavily interested in the sound of jazz music overall. You know.
It's in the name, I guess.
Yeah, it means all that jazz. I stole it from Top Cat.
Hey, just a minute. What's with all this jazz?
That's AT jazz to you, man.
What's the AT stand for?
All that.
It figures.
You actually got RAH Band to release on Atjazz, and they're like one of the like pioneers of jazz fusion. That seems like a really big name to me.
Well, there's another connection. You'll like this because I sense that you like connections. So when I was 9 years old, I used to go to the youth club, and I'm not sure that you're aware of a British TV show called Top of the Pops, but it was a pop music show, and on a Thursday night it used to be on the TV, and we were all at the youth club, and they had a TV room, and there was a song in the charts called "Clouds Across the Moon." I was 9 or 10. I was 9 or 10. I'm sure I wasn't in secondary school, and I absolutely loved it. And every time it was on the radio or on the TV, I stopped to listen to it, and it was the RAH Band. And I've never ever got that song out of my head. And again, it was that kind of.
Hi, darling. How you doing? Hey, baby. Were you sleeping? Oh, I'm sorry.
Really cool, super well, beautifully put together piece of, like you say, jazz fusion. It could have been born in Japan. If you didn't know any better. But Richard Hewson, who is the RAH Band, RAH, Richard Anthony Hewson, that's what it stands for, is from the northeast of England, the same as me. And he, as far as I understand, went into the Navy, went to sea, and he had a guitar in his room and a book, and he learned how to play guitar. And then when he came out of the Navy, he went on to learn guitar at college. And his college teacher said to him, you're going to have to go in at the deep end today, Richard. I can't do this gig. You're going to have to go and play with Mr. Hancock, Herbie Hancock.
Right. So
Richard takes his guitar, goes to the studio session. It was for Blow Up, the movie. The soundtrack was by Herbie Hancock. And Herbie Hancock didn't lay a finger on any instruments for that recording of the album because it was in England and he didn't have the right working permit to actually perform anything. So all the instruments were played by everyone else. And there was a particular song on that album that Richard played guitar on. And he came up with this ding 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 ding. Which went on to be sampled by Delight for Groove Is in the Heart. Which is amazing. So that's a good RAH Band connection there. Richard also lived with Herbie Hancock in the States for a bit. He's done string arrangements for the Beatles, for Paul McCartney, for the Bee Gees, for Fleetwood Mac. He's a bit of a British Quincy Jones character. But really randomly, I met up with Richard and stayed over at his house down south in England. I met his son, Dan Hewson, who is taking over the RAH Band. And Dan used to live in Portugal, and his guitar player was Anthony Wheeldon.
Oh, man.
Small world. I was shocked. I was on a pier in Brighton going, what? Like, you can't, that's not a full circle if, wow. I was speechless. Literally speechless.
Yeah,
so that's the RAH Band connection. I love them so much. I approached Richard about 15 years ago and said I'd really, really love to remix Messages from the Stars and re-release it. Would you be up for doing a license? And he said yes. So that's how it happened. He's very, very down to earth.
Yeah, I just love the idea that the song that you heard as a child, like you got to meet and then remix that guy how many years later?
Yeah. Too many. 30 odd. Goodness gracious.
Yeah.
38 years or something.
And it sounds like you're familiar with the jazz fusion from Japan as well, like the T-Square Cassiopeia, I presume.
Yeah, some of it. Yeah, I'm kind of holding off until I'm older with the Japanese stuff because I still need some stuff to find.
Okay.
I don't want to listen to it all now. I want to dig around. I like digging for jazz. Although I hate record shopping. Absolutely despise record shopping. I've never liked it.
I mean, these days you just go on YouTube and find whatever you want.
Well, yeah. I just make it myself these days for my gigs, so.
Oh, yeah, that too.
But yeah, the RAH Band thing is I'm super honoured to even have had an email back from Richard, never mind releasing his music. He's so lovely, so kind and nice. And Dan's taken over the band, and he's they're doing a first live gig on the 11th of June at the Jazz Cafe in London. So that's the first RAH Band live gig since the 80s, somewhere.
Hmm.
So, yeah, madness when I think about it.
Yeah, at this point, I think I only have a few questions I kind of skipped over, so I want to go back, go through that, and I think we'll be done. So let's see, late 90s, Fighting Force, it's supposed to be Streets of Rage, but that fell apart. Was that like an inspiration when you were writing music, or like a point of reference?
Not really. Fighting Force. God, you know, that's one of the games that I really worked hard on, and every time I think about Fighting Force, I can't picture it in my head. It's so weird. It's like it doesn't exist. Every time I speak about it, or have spoken about it, I've had to look it up to look at the screenshot so I can like go, oh, that's Fighting Force, because I always think Skeleton Crew when I look in my head.
Yeah, I see what you mean, but I don't know, it has a very distinct Streets of Rage inspired look to me. Very retro PlayStation 1 era graphics.
Come on, Wi-Fi, you can do it. Wi-Fi is terrible in the studio. It's like a bunker because it's a soundproof space, so it's also cuts out the Wi-Fi. The computer's plugged in by a cable. Come on, you can do it.
Yeah, the soundtrack struck me as particularly interesting because I know you were into hip-hop at the time, but it sounded like you made the beats a bit faster and a bit harder, and basically you came up with big beat, but before it was a thing.
Yeah, there it is. Oh my goodness. I forgot it was a 3D game.
Yep.
Jeez. Yeah, Fighting Force. God, we did it. Did we do Fighting Force 2 as well?
Yeah.
I think we did. I honestly cannot remember the music from Fighting Force at all, so I'm going to be shocked in about 1 second when it finishes. Yeah, it's one of those ones that we worked so hard on that game. I remember the late nights. It was just like, wow, the games testers. Was it around the same time as like Tony Hawk's Skater when that came out on the PlayStation or something? Oh my goodness, I remember that sound as well.
Yeah, I can't remember where Tony Hawk
Wow.
was in that timeline.
Shooting people in the face with a pistol. That's how we used to do it.
Yeah.
I'm quite surprised at how good it looks, actually. Right, I remember it now. Yeah. I'm not really sure. I think, at that point, I was quite concentrated on making the game sound exactly what it should sound like, rather than going off on a tangent. So it was probably a little bit more considered, that particular game.
Yeah, but what was it supposed to sound like then?
I don't know. I don't think it wasn't a particular style. It was just, some chunky drums and some synthesizers, and did Anthony play on that one? I'm not even sure. He might have done.
I don't think he did.
There might be a bit of chuggy chug or something on it, but I don't. It's no leads like on Thunderhawk. But yeah, it's like a blank in my memory. Fighting Force. I don't know what happened, but maybe it was just because it was such a hard game to work on. So it's quite a jump for us, doing the 3D stuff, next gen kind of gaming it freaked everyone out a little bit.
So you don't remember the fact that it was supposed to be Streets of Rage?
No, not at all.
Oh, okay.
I may have just missed that. I wasn't always in on the meetings, to be honest.
Oh, okay.
So meetings would happen without me because I was already doing something else. I was already on another game or something, So I was always brought in to do like the music at the right point. So it wasn't like we have regular meetings to talk about all of the things and make it right. I was left to. I was already having meetings on other games, if you know what I mean. Then I'd be brought in like, I don't know, third way through then join in, get a feel for it, work it out, kind of thing.
Yeah, I think that was the last game I wanted to talk about. I had some few thoughts on albums after you left Core. Although I think Full Circle, you like were just leaving. Like, wasn't it like right when you launched Atjazz Records?
Full Circle came out in 2004 actually first, and then
Oh,
this is about 2 years before Mantis was closed down. Well, I closed Mantis officially in 2009, but it ceased kind of releasing in 2006-ish. It was finished in 2004. I think it might have originally come out in 2005, something like that. But then we had a German distributor at the time called Neuton, and they went quiet on us for about 3 or 4 months, and they owed us a lot of money. And then eventually we had word that they'd gone into liquidation, and all of my CD sales and everything had gone with them, and we never got any money back from them, unfortunately. So yeah, that was a bit of a sad moment for my music, especially because I think it married in 2006. It was around that time. I'd left Core at this point and was doing freelance work for them, so for them and Circle Studios. So yeah, I think no, I'd left Core. I think I might have been producing some of the songs while I was still there, but they weren't finished while I was still at Core. It was after I left Core in 2000, and I think it was July 2004. So yeah, it's probably 2005, 2006 when that album was completed.
wait, was that the album that somebody broke into your studio?
No, that was Lab Funk. That was my second album.
Oh, okay, okay.
So yeah, I was in the studio one afternoon and I heard some people running up the stairs, and it was some builder guys, and they just came in, and I was like, what do you want? Oh, I didn't know what was going on up here. Well, you shouldn't walk into people's spaces anyway. I'm not going to argue with two massive builders. Yeah, and essentially they were thieves looking up the place, and because it was adjoined to a club, the club had turned off all the alarm systems, and they'd come that night and took a load of my kit, basically. So that was a bit horrible. And my computer with all my album kind of files on it. But the computer was in a bin, in a dumpster around the back of the building, because it was worth nothing to them. And they took everything out my racks, but they left all my analog synths. So I was quite lucky to, they took what looked like CD players. They had no idea what they were taking. But yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. There's my own forgetting that synths are expensive earlier.
Yeah, very expensive. And I bought most of my synths while I was working at Core. My expensive ones anyway. But yeah, so yeah, again, that was out. I was out at that point. I was already DJing, and I was working with new artists and stuff. It's been a long time since I listened to Full Circle, but I've got a fair few people that are on that album or on the new album, so which is quite nice.
Yeah, Full Circle had a bunch of collaborations and singers and people you brought on.
Well, I wanted to make some songs. The only, I think, what was it? There was Harmony on Lab Funk, which did really well. Harmony's a big tune for me. Then there was It's Complete, which I actually sang on. So I did everything on that. And then I can't remember if there's any Touch the Sun. He just had a vocal hook that I paid someone to sing. So I think that was about it on that album. But yeah, Full Circle was kind of full of features, because I wanted to branch out and make better songs, essentially. And that's kind of what I've been doing ever since, just pushing and trying to work with better people, and to get the best out of what I can do, and also it's a bit selfish because I want to work with some people because I really love what they do. So you've got to try it out sometimes, and tap on people's doors, and sometimes it works. So like on one song on the new album, I've got Omar, the British soul singer, and his old friend Max Beasley, who's an actor in Hollywood, who's also a vibraphone player. When he went to music college with Omar back in the day, and they know each other and feature on each other's music quite a lot. So I wanted to kind of bring those two together on a song that I produce up. So this is the thing that gets what's so exciting about doing music that is kind of freedom music for me. Like, I can do what I want, is I can design my own future. I don't know how it's all going to pan out in the end, but it allows me to experiment in a way, not too much. I need to sell records still. I don't want to make too much experimental music,
Right.
but experiment in a way that's it gives me freedom, and it's exciting because I love music, so I want to make more of it. But yeah, the end of Core Design was 2004 when I left. Then, like I mentioned before, I worked freelance for a good 2-3 years or something for Rebellion and for Circle Studios. So did music and sound effects for Blood Trails. I did music sound effects for other stuff for Circle Studios for a couple of games there. We did some music for Nigel, who was the music programmer at Core. In the end, he's working with Sega, and they did the GTA. They redid the GTA game, so I redid all the music for that Sega game. So yeah, that it just got really, like, from 2004. Oops, sorry. Went until getting into finishing Full Circle. That area is really kind of busy for me because I had so many different jobs, and my business collapsed as well. So yeah, it was a funny old time.
Yeah. I wanted to ask, how did you get all the people to collaborate with? Like, was that a label connections kind of thing by chance?
With Clara Hill, that was me asking her. I already knew Alexander Bach from Jazzanova really well, and I'd been to their office a few times in Berlin when I was over there DJing. And I just asked Clara if she'd like to sing on one of my songs, and she said yes. Would you produce a song for my album at some point? I said yes. So we did like a swapper thing. Then Jonathan Ernesto, he was published by my publisher, so they said, why don't, because that's their job, why don't you team up with Ernesto? Then I wanted to do a song with a house legend, so luckily Robert Owens was published by my publisher at the time, so I got to work with Robert. And then I did a remix for Sarah Jane Morris. Sarah Jane Morris used to be in the Communards, big English group, and she really enjoyed what I did, and she was interested in doing some work, so I did a song with her. Like I say, these things come, when I'm working all day, it's not like you sit around watching your streams, tot up, or watch your iTunes sales click
Right.
over. You're constantly working, so things happen because you're making it happen. I don't have a minute in the day to do nothing. So when you finish one piece of music, you load up another and edit that and go, oh, this might be good for this person. Do I know them? Do I know anybody that knows this person? So you start asking around, and you just make connections. 9 times out of 10, people want to work and they want to be paid. So if you can afford to pay people, they want the work. And luckily my music's quite digestible, so they can quickly kind of understand the direction I'm coming from. And most people have been up for the challenge of working with me. A few people have kind of dragged along and not kind of managed to kind of make it over the line, but majority have come through, so on the new album at least. So yeah, it's just like making connections. And the music industry, my friend Fred Everything, he always says to me, it's like an ecosystem and everybody plays their part. No one is more important than someone else. And I do believe in that. I think that, everyone wants to collaborate. Everyone wants to do something interesting, especially if you're working in the same music zone as these people. 9 times out of 10, it's going to be a yes. You know, I don't turn people down if it's someone I like and they come and ask me to do something with them. I'll say, I'm busy at the moment. Let's get back. Let's have a chat next month or something. So it's constant kind of conversations that are going on.
Yeah, okay. Something you mentioned in that was your music is digestible. I think you mentioned something about not wanting to experiment too much.
Mm-hmm.
I'm wondering, like, have you ever just indulged yourself and just see what you could experiment with? See what happens?
I have actually. I have another project under my real name. I've got my Martin Iveson releases, and they are more experimental, absolutely. And the reason I did that project is because I needed an outlet where there were no expectations of what I was going to put out, because I have a fan base now and they kind of are used to what I'm doing. So I don't want to kind of scare them off with it. Oh, I'm doing this now.
Yeah, I get that.
Because it's paying my bills, you know.
Right.
So I don't want to like throw my team off course. So I've got to do the Atjazz stuff, but in order for me to do something else, I need another outlet. So I started doing the Martin Iveson music, and I did a few releases on my other label, Less Than 10. And then I've done something on a couple of other labels, a remix for Counter Records, which is one of Ninja Tunes subs for Marabou State, and then something on Fred Everything's label. And then I've done a 17-track Martin Iveson album, which never got finished because I was waiting on one particular person, and they just dragged their feet, yes, and then nothing happened, and it just fizzled out, and I had to get on with other things. So I've got like a half-written album that I started 6.5 years ago, which is kind of the experimental stuff. And there's a DJ friend of mine called Kid Funk from South Africa. He came over and stayed, and I played him some of the stuff, and he said, that sounds like my favourite artist's been signed to Warp. It's like smooth but all over the place, basically. Like, it's really fusiony.
That sounds really, really good, and I want to hear it.
It's interesting, you know. It's got I went on the radio with Giles Peterson about 5 years ago, on BBC 6, and I played a couple of tunes from it on the radio, and they sounded good. But yeah, it's an interesting project, that's for sure. I really want to finish it as soon as the Atjazz album's done. I'm moving straight back onto it. I also wanted to send it to Ninja Tune because one of the label managers there was really interested in hearing it. So it may even come out via another label at some point. So yeah, but yeah, I do experiment, but it's more you know. Like, I'll play you a couple of little bits just to give you an idea. They're very, very short. That's one of the more ambient bits. There's these interesting tunes I've done with Charisma from Baltimore in America.
Oh yeah, there we go.
So that's more like Baltimore beats with modular synthesis and all sorts of stuff on it, you know.
I can also see what the other guy was talking about with fusion science of warp kind of vibe. Yeah.
Yeah, and then this is about my children. This is my 2 boys. It's called Moon Suns, because you know how the moon can pull your water and make you feel different times of the month, and
right.
So it's all, there's a really huge chunk. This one, yeah, December 2016. This is when I played this on the radio. So it's a bit crazy, but it's nice. A lot of it falls into place. But there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, because that's been taken. 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 20. Oh, there's 22 songs, sorry.
Huh.
And it's quite personal. I've got, songs on there called 17M for 17Y, which is like, I lived in a place, number 17 on a particular street for 17 years and left home when I was 17. My new album's called Starbase 17. There's a lot of things related to that number. So again, it's more personal, and there's some of it's very wayward, but it's harmonic though, and it has to be interesting.
Right.
I'll always go back to that. It's got to interest me first, because I'm a good self cheese filter, basically. I'm quite hard on myself.
Yeah, I get that. What's interesting to me though is that it sounds, at least in its experimental, like, open nature, it sounds like your earlier works. Like, it feels like your earlier works were a bit more exploratory, and it took you a while to develop that Atjazz sound.
Absolutely, and you're completely right. It feels like I'm doing it for me, rather than doing it for anyone else.
Yeah, and I love that.
And the outcome of that will be the outcome of that. I have no expectations if anyone buys it or no one buys it. I'm not doing the album for those reasons. Whereas the Atjazz album, I am doing it for all of those reasons, because that's the expectation I have to keep up. This is my business. So this song with Omar and Max Beasley, you'll notice the difference. It's very much together, You
can look deep down inside my soul. Let go, I want to take control. Sit back, I've got the wings sinking to my dreams. Nothing is ever what it seems. And always is.
So you get the vibe. It's like, it's much more collected, much more centered, much more for a more wider audience. Where the Martin Iveson stuff is like, it'll fall into the genre of electronica, I think,
Yeah, a little bit, yeah. Just kind of related to some other thoughts that I had was, I think Full Circle might be my favorite album of yours, because it hits this like perfect balance of electronic and soul.
I like it.
Yeah,
I like it.
Fusion feel that I like a lot.
No, I was just going to say, it was a nice album to complete. I had a little kind of listening session at the end of it where I invited a few people over to the studio, and I felt like it was a bit of something to celebrate after everything felt like it was falling apart, if you know what I mean. So
yeah. But then I listened to some of your more recent stuff, like Mix 1 and 2, and I noticed that was extremely electronic.
Yeah, I mean, I enjoyed doing those albums so much. Well, that album actually, because the Mix 2 album is just like it's remixes of Mix 1 and alternative versions and stuff. But that was born of not being able to complete my Martin Iveson album.
Huh.
So I couldn't get that done. It was too much of a big body of work, and I'd made it wait for too long, and I needed to do something. So I decided, looking at the way that the world was going, that I was going to do an album, but release it track by track over 10 months. So I made a song, mastered it, put it out, made a song, mastered it, put it out, made a song, mastered it, put it out. And in the end, I remastered it all and bundled it as a full album. And then I waited a while. I was dicing with the idea and got loads of people on board to remix it. And then I thought, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to. I already had some alternate versions I was working on. I thought I'm just going to do that, and so I spent about 3 weeks just kind of pulling the other versions together and doing it again. But again, that album wasn't made for anyone but me. So
okay.
it was virgin. I was coming out of writing the Martin Iveson stuff, so I was quite frustrated and wanted to, do something and feel that I'd actually completed a project where I'd been kind of stumbled on the one prior to it. So the songs were flowing out at an incredibly high rate. There was no blockage in making any of that music on the Mix 1 and Mix 2 albums, and I don't see them as full like Atjazz artist producer albums. Like that's something Lab Funk and Full Circle. I see them. I see it as like a fix to a situation, and because it was made again, I was filling up my DJ key with my own tunes, and they were all very playable. So I was kind of adding to my armory of good tunes to take out, and it was really well received. Track 1 off Mix 1 was really. I mean, that's why they don't have names, as well, because they're just tracks. They're not songs. They're just tracks. They just select the next one, move on. Select the next one, move on.
Do they even have project names?
Track 1, Mix 1.
Well, I can't imagine you just go into your projects folder and track 1 is there, and it's something you wrote after how many years? Sure, you'd be up to track 10,000 by now.
No, a lot of them do. No, most of them do. That project doesn't, though, unfortunately. It's literally track 1, but I know what they are. Yeah, if I have a look in there, I think it's in a track. Yeah, the folder's called Track.
Huh.
And there we go.
I always think project names are funny, because everybody seems to have their own method.
Here we go. Check this out. Can you see that?
Yeah.
That's the track folder. So
I'm
it's just
surprised that you managed to keep it so clean.
There we go. There's the mix downs. A couple of different ones. Version 2, version 1. And then you've got Mix 2. We've got track 7, Mix 2. That fell out of that folder for some reason. Mix 2, again, track 1, track 2. Right to 10, mixed, and then I've got track 10, Mix 1, spelling mistake. That's my vocation in life, is to spell everything wrong. And there's the final pre-masters before I've mastered it. So literally, it's just so boring. It's the most boring folder in the world. So yeah, there we go.
Is it what do you usually? Is there a convention to your project names?
Never. When I'm mastering these days, because I do a lot of mastering for other labels and stuff, generally it's kind of catalog number, track number, artist name.
Very meticulous.
It helps when you hand it back to the labels and they're cataloging their work as well.
Oh,
you
yeah,
don't
definitely.
need to catalog it, so you can just, you know what it is. If you need to search for something on your computer, you just search for the catalog number, and boom, there's your track, there's your files. We're looking at over 1,000 files so far on the label. So you've got to, they've got to be organised somehow. They're just all over the place. But not necessarily. No, my computer's an absolute mess. Absolute mess.
Yeah, I decided to just look at my own project files, and we got names like "What if Stupid Bass Stack" or "Bass Stack," whatever. It's not spelled like that though.
Oh, I've been through the whole thing of my folders on my computer. I've got Old Hip Maze, Oak Tree, no bass, Marive, whatever. They're just random thing. RRA. Don't even know what it is. It's laziness.
Yeah.
That's what it is. It's I can't be bothered. No.
Yeah, but I don't know. In my head, I still got some idea of what they are because I'll think of a file name when after I've sketched out a few ideas, like this one, whoops all DOMs.
Love it. I love it. But my mastering folder is incredibly organized, so that's the key. It's all very
Yeah, it's like the last step, so I guess it should be organized by that point.
yeah, it has to be. It's not a particularly nice job being the last person to touch someone's work, but it's, you know, I've been doing it for 15 years. I've been doing mastering heavily for the last 8 or so.
Yeah. I think I only had one question left, and that's not really a question, just a thought. I think your most recent album was Big Bad Crazy. If there's another one that I missed it.
With that was with Julian, yeah.
I noticed that it took an electronic edge, but it still had more soul, like the genre influence, than the mix 1 and 2.
This time, it's my time. It's my time. No, now.
We wanted to. It was quite a journey doing that album. We wanted to do a kind of shorter album, like a boutique album, where the songs kind of unfolded a bit, you know.
Oh yeah, I noticed that too.
You know, some of it's quite heavily produced. You know, it's just so much complexity in the synthesizers and the sampling and what have you. Basically, Julian got to go through my old vinyl collection. Piles and piles and piles of old jazz records and jazz funk records, fusion records, Dexter Wansel albums, you know, this album, random Brazilian albums with percussion on, and I said to him, just, you need to learn about this kind of music. You need to know about it, because you know, in South Africa you're kind of a bit, you know, starved of this stuff. You don't get as much as we do over here, and so he was just going, bruh, and picking records out and going, oh, we should sample that. And I was like, nah, that's really like super obvious. It's been sampled like 1,000 times, and we'll get into trouble if we sample that. But majority of samples we took, we were pitching them, reversing them, whatever, and just making them so unrecognizable that you know, it was safe. I think that creative sampling is a real exciting thing to do, and I think it's an art form in itself. But so basically we spent, Julian was staying with us for 6 weeks at that time. The album was pretty much done in that time. You know, using vocoders on the first track for the bass and the leads and all that kind of stuff. And we went in really heavy on making sure that every piece of music had a character, had a sound, had a story. You know, even the mastering took 2 days, and it normally doesn't take anywhere near that long to master an album. So it was, you know, for me, although it's not like a personal Atjazz album, it's a collaboration album, I feel really attached to that one. It feels like I really poured all of my efforts and energies into it.
Yeah, you said you're into sampling. Are you familiar with Todd Edwards?
Oh, very much so, yeah.
Yeah, that's my favorite kind of like chopping up samples and like getting some new sounds out of it in a way.
Yeah, he's a master.
Yeah, I love that kind of stuff.
He's absolute master at it.
Another thing you mentioned was you've mentioned several times South Africa, or South America.
Mm-hmm.
Which one?
South Africa.
Yeah. Do you like go there often, or what's up with that?
I did, yeah. I've not been for 2 years for obvious reasons.
Right.
But it was one of the last places I did go. Actually, I have had the fortune to be asked to go and play in this farming village called Taung, about 5 hours drive from Johannesburg. It's quite far. It's down near Kimberley, and it's a crowd of about 25,000 people. So I played there twice in my time, and it was the last gig I did. But my first time in South Africa was February 2011, and then I kind of went there probably 2 times every year, or
Oh, so it's a
minimum.
regular occurrence. Okay.
Yeah, maybe once a year for 3 weeks was my longest time, and then I'd go for a couple of weeks, or I'd go for a big long weekend, for instance, and squeeze 5 gigs in. But you know, at that point in 2012, my first son arrived, so it was quite hard going away for such a long period of time, with having no family in the city to help us with the kids either. So, and then in 2015, my second son came along, so it just got progressively more difficult for me to go. And then, obviously, since March 2020, when everything went crazy, I've not been back. So maybe early next year, when my album's out and I've got something to talk about, I'll go back over. I've been asked many times to go for gigs. I just don't feel completely comfortable traveling just yet. So
Right. Is that like your most active place that you have gigs, or just an important one, or what?
it is important, yeah, because you know my gigs are generally really busy. I've got a really lovely fan base out there. They're amazing people. You know, it's people screaming at me and throwing clothes at me and stuff. It's a bit weird because it's just house music, but it's really lovely. It's really lovely. It's really, really cool. And I was going with my bass player Ross, who's one of my best friends, and he's amazing at performing. So you know, for instance, I'm DJing and we take all the bass lines off the tunes and he does them all live. So and then he just it's all wireless system, so he just walks to the end of the pier in front of the crowd all around him, and he jumps in the crowd and has the crowd playing his bass with him and things like that. So we're quite a formidable, you know, duo when we go over there. People expect, you know, to be entertained, that's for sure.
Hold on. Do you write songs like specifically for that kind of performance?
No, it's kind of, so basically the reason that I got so well known in South Africa is because of a remix I did of a couple of American artists, Musaria and Saturna. They did a song called Moment. It was quite a poppy house tune. I wasn't even sure I should remix it because I didn't know what direction I could take it in. So I took on the challenge and did the remix, and then I got a video message from a friend of mine called Rolf Gum, who's a really well-known German producer who lives in South Africa now, actually, saying, your song's gone massive in South Africa, and he showed me a picture of thousands of people singing it. And I was like, oh gosh, right, okay. Then I start getting phone calls and emails from people saying, we want to bring you out. And I've been on TV, all sorts of stuff out there on many occasions, TV, radio, you know, massive festivals, really small gigs, which I've really enjoyed in the townships, you know, really, like, I'm talking super ghetto gigs, which are kind of the best ones, really. They're the most fun, the intimate ones. But yeah, it's been a really important part of my life. My sister lived there when I was little, so South Africa always had a thing about when I was 8 or 9 or something. She lived there for a couple of years, so we didn't see her for a couple of years, and then, you know, when she came back, it was very exciting, and the stories of living out there, etc. And then an ex-partner of mine, her brother was living out there and doing his PhD in South Africa, so I got to meet a few South African people as well of coming back over, and I felt like I had a connection with it. So the very first time I went there, I didn't feel away from home. Really didn't feel awkward to be in a different place, as you know. Can go to Switzerland from here, which is 2 hours away, and it can feel alien, whereas, you know, South Africa always feels like it's just home. So yeah, it's been a really nice kind of journey with South Africa, and it's not over yet, that's for sure. But I want to come stateside now, and I've got loads of offers for tours, so that's kind of where my concentration's aiming, because I never really did anything in the States. I've been to New York to DJ once, and that was in 2006, so yeah.
Yeah.
South Africa's bonkers. It's an exciting place.
Yeah, I guess you're not going to be touring it in the immediate future, but just to close this out, like, do you have anything that fans should look out for?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I am starting to DJ again, and my album Starbase 17 is coming out this year. And it is a very big album. It's got loads of songs, like 24, I think, at the minute. It may be a little bit less than that when I finalise the track listing. And if anybody is interested in sampling, they should check out my sample pack one shots, because that's all samples taken from my well-known remixes and productions. So it's not just like random stuff I've made. It's 90% of the sounds are like, you know, taken from productions and things that have been released. So it was essentially to help people kind of understand where I come from with sound. So that kind of helps a little bit. It kind of answers a couple of your questions as well, though. You know, what is my sound, and what, you know, it's very difficult to explain. I remember explaining it to a Japanese magazine once, and I said it's all different types of beats, all over the place, but it's got a soft center, and that's it. I guess that's one way of describing it.
It makes sense to me.
Yeah.
So where are you most active online? Like, where can people find you? Like Twitter, Facebook?
Oh,
or...
Instagram, yeah. Instagram and Facebook, I'm always on there. They kind of joined at the hip, to be fair, both of them. I am on Twitter, so on Twitter it's Martin Atjazz, one word. Instagram's Atjazz Official, and the same Facebook, Atjazz Official. But yeah, I'm pretty much, I'm quite a noisy internetter. I'm always doing something on there, whether it's posting a picture of a dog climbing a tree, or you know, me posting something about music. But there's loads of stuff coming out, and you know, it's non-stop, really, whether it's from me or from the artists on my label. But yeah, if anyone wants to follow, all the support is very much appreciated.
And that's all for this video. Thanks for watching, or listening as it were. Usual stuff here at the end of the video. Subscribe, support, watch more of my stuff. Whatever the case, thanks for watching.